The BRRRR strategy might not be dead, but it is most certainly sleeping.
I'm Philip Sirius, this is Andrew Sirius, and we're moving away from a strategy we've used for 11 years. We've done this almost 600 times. We were doing BRRRR before it was even called BRRRR. So what is the BRRRR strategy?
Well, BRRRR strategy is buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. It's basically buying and holding, but thinking as if you're going to flip. So you buy with enough equity in the property that you could flip it and make a profit, but instead you use that equity as a down payment, more or less. So you refinance out all of the cash that you invested into the property, and you end up, if you do it right, with a property that you have no money into, or very little. Generally speaking, we've left a little bit into these properties, but not a lot, and that has allowed us to expand very rapidly. But this market in particular makes the BRRRR strategy particularly difficult to function in.
This is a good example of it. In Jackson County, Missouri, where we've done a lot of our investing,
where we're based out of,
the Kansas City market, if there is not another house put on the market in less than a month, if the sell rate continues, all the houses will be gone. There's 0.8 months of inventory left. That means things are flying off the shelves.
That means for every 10 houses that are sold in the month, there are 8 left on the market. That was December. And it's been that way all year. It was 0.6 in April. It's been that way all across the country. Prices are up 14% year over year. 43% of listed properties got an offer that was over the asking price. Like, I was out looking for properties and virtually for a home to buy, and virtually every single one was over asking. We finally got one that was only $15,000 over asking, and in some places that is a bargain. There's a house that sold in Washington D.C. just recently for $1 million over asking. Same thing happened in San Francisco. Same thing happened in San Jose. Yeah, it's just like $1 million, not $1 million. In total, like $1 million over the asking price.
I mean, when I look over comps now, when I'm looking over comps, I see the listing price and the sales price, and 90% of the time, the sales price is higher than the listing price. Now, this isn't anything new. We've talked about this before. The market is very, very hot. What that means is, if you need to get that kind of margin for a BRRRR so you can refinance out your total investment, that's very challenging. Not impossible.
No.
But extremely challenging to do.
If you think about it logically, why, like, if somebody's behind on their mortgage, why wouldn't they just list the property and sell it? If somebody's an out-of-state absentee owner who has a dilapidated property, just list it and sell. Now, there are people who don't even want to deal with that. They want it gone now. They don't. The price isn't that important. There are still BRRRR opportunities, but at the same point, it's hard to convince somebody that, oh, I'm going to close quickly. Well, who cares? I'll just put it with an agent and get an offer in the first week. Not everywhere, not always, but
you're
again,
also competing with flippers. I mean, that's a lot of what you're doing with the BRRRR strategy. Instead of flipping the property and selling it, you're holding on to that equity and using that equity you've created to refinance and keep the property rather than sell it and get the cash. You're competing with these flippers who now are going for thinner and thinner margins because that's all that they can get.
And so I've seen in the bigger pocket forums on Facebook and stuff like that, a lot of people saying, like, how do I get in? Like, there's just no deals around, or there are very few. Like, there's still people that are chomping at that tiny, chasing the yield, trying to get that little bit left. Certainly there's that, and there's certainly, great marketers who can find ones here and there. But a lot of questions about, like, how do I BRRRR in general, or how do I BRRRR in a market like this? And it's kind of like, I just want to tell them, like, you should have started like 6 years ago.
It's not very good advice.
That's not very good advice.
Well, a lot of people are going to tell you, okay, that means a market's going to crash. It's overpriced. Don't get in. Stay out of the market. This is a bad time to buy. Isn't that what a lot of people are saying?
A lot of people say. A lot of people think the market is going to collapse, or they say, like, I'm going to sit on the sidelines. We have another video. Please check it out in the description on why you shouldn't just sit on the sidelines. I've known people who have been sitting on the sidelines since 2015, since 6 years ago. We're like, oh, it's too hot then, I'll wait for it to correct. We are in a market now that probably it could very well correct. It could very well go down some. We are in an inflationary environment. I think the last inflation report was 7%. You could see nominal reduction in price if real estate goes up 5% nominally, And but inflation is 7%, which means the real price of real estate went down 2%. You could very well see something like that just for affordability reasons. People are having a harder and harder time paying these prices. But I don't think we're going to see a major crash. People are thinking like 2008, keep hearing it. there are major structural differences between now and 2008, and the most obvious is there is a housing shortage, borderline housing crisis in the United States now that did not exist in 2008. According to Freddie Mac, there is a 3.8 million unit shortage in the United States. They were building over 1 million units a year between 2000 and 2007, over 2 million between 2004 and 2007. After the crash, that collapsed to near, close to nothing. They were around 500,000 for most of the 2010s, only got over 1 million the year before COVID. And then COVID hit, and with the lockdowns, pretty much construction and development just stopped. So we have this massive housing shortage that's really keeping things. And at the same time, you add into that, we have we don't have the teaser rates. We don't have
the lending practices are completely different.
We don't have the ninja loans, the no income, no job, no assets. We don't have
and even if those did come back, I mean, what really caused it was that going on for years and years unchecked and stuff like that. And then we have so far to go. I mean, this doesn't mean it can't happen, but not only for a crash to happen does the crazy hot market have to stop going up so fast. It needs to start going up slowly, and then needs to kind of be even. And then, okay, the market could go down, but that doesn't mean it's going to crash at the same time. I mean, we're very far away from that happening. Yeah. It could switch on a dime, but I don't think the prerequisites are there to cause.
I think there's one other factor has happened. Politically speaking, I think the powers that be have more or less just decided
we're not doing this again.
We're not doing this again. No matter how much money we have to print, and like something like 40% of all the dollars printed in the entirety of the history of the United States were printed in 2020 and 2021. But they can still keep doing that. I mean, the dollar can lose a lot of value before
they're going to fake it till they make it. Yeah. They're going to fake it and go like, your house isn't losing value because the number goes
fake
up.
It until they have to fake it some more.
Yeah, exactly. And so the numbers keep going up, but it's really just the dollar getting
in 2008, they did the quantitative easing, they did the stimulus, they did the bailout. You will see even more of that if we have this. And I don't think we'll start in real estate because while they're still doing a lot of low LTV loans, low loan to value, or you have very low down payments, the teaser rates, the stated income, that stuff is more or less gone. And there is just this demand and supply are not matched. Yeah. Demand is way higher than supply. And
it's
basic
real
economics,
it's real
there's
demand.
No real way to satisfy that. So it's not like 2008 where you have those empty subdivisions. Right now we have very full subdivisions and very angry people about housing prices with the necessity of more units.
Now, here's the weird thing. I'm saying we're moving away from BRRRR because it's hibernating, it's sleeping right now. But we're saying the market's not going to crash. So what do we recommend you should do? And I say, honestly, a lot of you should try to BRRRR. And I know that doesn't make sense, but it depends on what your goals are. If you're only looking for 1 or 2 houses a year, or maybe even 1 house every couple of years, you can find those BRRRR deals still. They do exist. Yeah. They're harder to find. They're very difficult. You can look for those deals that have that really good margin. Yeah. We don't look for 1 or 2 deals a year. So we're moving away from this because we can't expand at a rapid rate this way.
Or close to BRRRR. I mean,
that's what we're moving to.
I would never recommend settling for market value, unless you're a hedge fund buying or something like that. But you should always be looking for, really at least a 10% margin. But at the same point, the 25% is very hard to get. But maybe you got to get 20%. You can get the 2 deals a year, whatever. But pushing that down a bit, because I guess the real crux of it is every market has major advantages and major disadvantages.
Yeah.
But what I said earlier about you should have started 6 years ago, well, I mean, sort of. I mean, when we first came out to Kansas City in 2011, it's like nostalgia. I mean, the prices were a joke. I mean, houses that we are buying, we see now on the market for $120,000. Were on the market for like $25,000. I mean, they needed work. Don't get me wrong; they were not.
Yeah, it's crazy to look at what we paid for prices.
We would go on these property tours, just looking at listed bank-owned properties for the most part. Look at 15, offer on 13, get 2.
Well, and everybody goes, "I wish I could go back to those days." But
I kind of do too.
Yeah, but we had our own issues there.
Yeah, the problem is, why did we only buy 2? Why didn't we just buy all of them? And the reason is financing was god awful.
Nobody give us any money.
Yeah,
nobody give anybody any money.
It was very hard to get private lenders on, although we were able to convince some. Banks was, I mean, it was.
They were shell-shocked.
We got I constantly be like, oh yeah, that sounds good, and then they'd give me that call, and you just know when you hear their voice, like
they're extremely
"Hey, Andrew,"
conservative.
like, I'm sorry.
The first bank we got to do these BRRRR loans with us, they would say you have to own the asset for 2 years performing before we'll go off of appraised value, which you can't really do a whole lot if you have to wait 2 years
nowadays
between every cycle.
We have banks that will literally refinance at the appraised value instead of the cost we have into the property. So if we were into it for 100 and it's worth 125, they will lend based on that 125. We got banks that will do that as soon as we have the property rehabbed and rented. Others are 6 months. Back then it was 2 years. 6.5% interest on a 15-year amortization.
Actually, the first one we got was 10 years.
Oh yeah, we got one 10-year amortization. Nowadays, I just bought a personal residence. Now that's better financing, but it was 3% interest, 30-year am, 90 or only 5% down. And like it's just like ridiculously a ridiculous rate. So you just go to like NerdWallet or any of these other sites, you can see that mortgages are in like the 2.3 to like 3.2 range, and if you're getting like a 15-year, you're going to be in the twos. And like our now we usually go to smaller banks, so we're usually getting 20-year amortizations, but we're still getting in the low fours. 4.25 is our most common rate. And the big thing to think about this, like I just like these two numbers. Okay, this is inflation, and this is your interest rate.
That's a 7, by the way.
That's a 7.
You can't read it. 7 and 4.25.
This should not be. This makes no sense. Like your interest rate should be above inflation, because that means the bank is losing money by loaning you money that you pay back. Now they're not, because they're borrowing from the Fed at like 0.2% or whatever. But if that wasn't the case, they'd be losing money by lending. You're basically effectively making money by borrowing it, which
goes against Dave Ramsey and everything.
Yeah, Dave Ramsey's
but
not.
You know what? The only kind of loan he's okay with is a mortgage, but not on a property. So we'll skip by that.
So every market has its advantage, and if we're not in a situation where the real estate market appears like it's going to collapse, it might go down a little bit. It's hard, but I mean, it could keep going up. We have a housing shortage. And you have where you can get rates that are substantially below inflation. If you can lock this in on a cash flowing asset, that is an enormous advantage, and that is the advantage of this market. Back in 2011, the advantage was tons and tons of bank owned properties that you can buy for cheap.
But you can't get any money.
Can't get any financing. now there's not very many deals, but there is incredible financing available that doesn't make any sense, and there's just no plausible way that this can last that much longer.
So keep looking for deals. You might not hit that 25% margin, or you can't find a lot of those, or you have to do very difficult value add, or you have some niche that you're hitting or something like that. Keep looking for that, but if you want to really expand.
Getting your foot in the door. A lot of people are thinking I wish I had started investing 5-6 years ago. I can't now I can't get started. No. You
save up your W-2 income and lock in that really low rate. It's a great way to do it.
The gurus are all wrong. Jobs are fantastic for real estate investors. At the beginning.
Yes.
You got that. Banks love W-2 income. This is the absolute perfect time to do house hacking. Even FHA. I mean, some sellers don't like FHA, but if you're not in the ridiculously hard markets, you can still get FHA loans. You only have to put 3.5% down. Many banks are only making you put 5% down. Mine only made me put 5% down. Small down payment. If you can get into a house, that's great. Try to get fix it up or whatever. Live there for a while, then move on. Keep that as a rental and buy another property. Or even better, with an FHA loan, you can go up to a fourplex, buy a duplex, buy a fourplex.
Lock in that big mortgage on a fourplex that has a lot of rental income. Get
into long-term debt on properties that either you can start renting out and cash flowing now or in the future, and that means live there and hold it.
Now there's always risks with everything. One of the biggest risks, you got to make sure this is a performing asset, that you know how to do the management of it, because you're buying at a high price, and so you're trying to offset that price by your long-term debt obligations being smaller because your interest rate is so low. So that means you have to hold it for a period of time to make that make sense.
Luxury house. This is not a luxury housing strategy.
And this is something you need to hold for a while for it to make sense, because the purchase price is the purchase price, and you have that much debt on the property, and you pay that over time.
No adjustable rate mortgages right now. You want to lock in a fixed rate.
You want to make sure
as long as possible.
You got your management down.
Years.
You can make it perform. You're not going to have issues with the mortgage payment, stuff like that. Because then if you have to dump the property because you can't make it perform, you still have that high purchase price.
If you have no reserves whatsoever, this is probably because cash flow has gotten harder too. Rents have gone up but not kept pace with mortgages. So You definitely want to make sure this is a property that can cash flow, which is why if you're willing to, if you're want to get into real estate at the beginning, getting into a duplex or something like that, living in one unit, renting out the other, or something along those lines is even better, and not going or living in a property that might not be the ideal thing, might not be your dream home, but something that you can, once you move out a year from now or 2 years from now or whatever, you can rent it out and cash flow, or or it looks like you can, versus like trying to break the budget to get that perfect home. I mean, that's not how real estate investors think. Real estate investors think long-term, dollars and cents, and getting in with long-term debt, particularly if you can get those homeowner mortgages, be they from a bank or FHA, on a property that you can eventually turn into a rental. That's just, I mean, this makes no sense, and this is the advantage of this market.
That's why we've been doing BRRRR for 11 years. We love to get back with it, but it's taking a little nap right now, like my daughters do.
We are temporarily
moving away,
retiring it. And I'd say a lot of people, we've talked a little bit about in this video, we touched on it, have gotten very discouraged about trying to find a property, trying to find any sort of deal. And what we're saying is the financing is more important now. You don't need to get that 25%. You still want a bit of a deal, but there are deals out there.
Yes, there are.
So don't be discouraged. Please check out this video on how to find those diamonds in the rough that are still available.